If you're new here, welcome to the channel, where humanity's strangest encounters become unforgettable stories. Before we dive in, make sure to smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more cinematic tales of what happens when humans defy the galaxy's expectations. Now let's begin. The transport shuttle hissed as it settled into the dirt of the colony world, its engines pushing clouds of dust over the treeline. Captain R.H.A. Core stepped down the ramp first, his armored boots pressing deep into the soil. His eyes, wide and silver like cold moons, scanned the horizon with disdain. To him, this place reeked of weakness. Human settlements, patched-together structures of steel and timber, scattered across the valley below like ants struggling to claim territory that belonged to bigger, hungrier predators. Behind him, the rest of the mercenary band disembarked. They were a mixed crew, clawed Ithari, scaled Dravans, and a few silent insectoids whose black carapaces gleamed beneath the fading sun. Their armor clinked, their weapons hummed with restrained menace. They had not come for war, not exactly. They had come for a hunt. The contract had been clear, written in the harsh script of syndicate brokers. Capture the beast known as the Nyx Raptor. Alive if possible, dead if not. Payment promised enough credits to buy a moon and its mines. R.H.A. Core had accepted without hesitation. He had led his mercenaries across dying planets and burning skies, but this prize was different. The Nyx Raptor was not just another monster, it was a name spoken with dread in war councils, a shadow whispered about in military archives. He smirked at the thought. To him, legends were only opportunities wrapped in fear. One of his lieutenants approached, a scarred Draven with spines jutting from his jaw. Captain, the locals say the predator circles human territory. Some speak of it lying beside a child. R.H.A. Core barked a laugh, sharp and guttural. Superstition. Humans cling to stories the way dying men cling to air. Beasts do not choose children. They eat them. Still, unease stirred among his crew. The ground bore signs of violence. Trees carved by talons, carcasses of armored grazers split open as if by molten blades. Yet scattered among the destruction lay incongruous details. A ragged cloth, bright with the print of a child's hand. A wooden toy soldier, its paint flaking but intact. Footprints, small, human, wandering dangerously close to claw marks deep enough to swallow them whole. The mercenaries muttered, their voices low, their languages carrying fear in universal tones. R.H.A. Core silenced them with a glare. Focus. We track, we capture, we collect. He motioned them forward into the forest. The deeper they went, the thicker the tension grew. The trees pressed in, heavy with the weight of silence. Birds did not sing here. Insects did not hum. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Each mercenary knew what such silence meant, predator territory. It was during this march that Daniel Briggs first appeared in their sights. He stood on the edge of a clearing, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in worn fatigues and a patched jacket that had once belonged to Earth's military forces. His hair was dark and streaked with gray, his jawline sharp beneath a few days' worth of stubble. He carried himself with the economy of someone who had long ago learned not to waste movement. A rifle hung across his back, its barrel polished but scarred from use. More striking than the man himself was his composure. He did not startle when a dozen armed mercenaries stepped into the open. He simply adjusted the strap on his shoulder and regarded them with eyes as steady as stone. "Lost something?" he asked, his voice low, roughened by years of use, yet edged with calm authority. R.H.A. Core narrowed his gaze. "Human. This territory belongs to beasts. What do you do here?" Daniel tilted his head, almost amused. "What do I do here? I live. Same as anyone. This is my home." Behind him, the outlines of a cabin stood among the trees, small, functional, the work of patient hands. Smoke curled faintly from a chimney. No fences, no walls, no armored turrets. Just the quiet defiance of a man who had decided he would not run from the wilderness. From the cabin's door, a child's laugh drifted into the clearing. A boy stepped out, no more than 7 years old, with tousled hair and a wooden toy sword in hand. He waved at his father before noticing the mercenaries. His eyes widened, but he did not scream. Instead, he ran to Daniel's side and tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, who are they?" Daniel rested a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Travelers," he said simply, though his gaze never left the mercenaries. The child, Ethan, stared at the alien figures with a mixture of awe and suspicion. R.H.A. Core studied him in return. Something in the boy's boldness unsettled him, though he could not place why. The mercenary captain stepped closer, his claws tapping against the hilt of his blade. "Human. We hunt the Nyx Raptor. Have you seen it? Daniel's expression shifted slightly, a faint tightening around the eyes. Why would anyone want to? Because it is the galaxy's deadliest predator. Because it is worth more than your world. Arichakor's voice was low and eager, as though savoring the promise of conquest. Answer the question. Daniel's grip on his rifle strap firmed, though he made no move to draw it. If you're looking for trouble, Captain, you'll find more than you can handle. The words carried no threat in their tone, yet they landed like stone on water, rippling through the mercenaries, stirring unease. One of them muttered, "He knows something." Arichakor snapped his jaws, silencing the whisper, but doubt crept into his own mind. Humans were fragile, yes, but this one stood like a soldier who had faced worse than blades and plasma fire. And the presence of the child? Why would any man raise a boy here in predator territory, unless he trusted something the mercenaries did not understand? Before the captain could demand more, a sound drifted through the trees. Not the crash of branches or the shriek of prey, but a deep, resonant growl that seemed to vibrate the ground itself. The mercenaries stiffened, weapons rising. Ethan looked up at the forest, his face brightening with recognition rather than fear. "He's back," the boy whispered. Daniel placed a steadying hand on his son's shoulder. His eyes never left the mercenaries, but his words were soft enough for Ethan alone. "Stay close, son." The growl came again, closer this time, carrying with it the unmistakable promise of power. The mercenaries glanced at one another, some already taking cautious steps back. Arichakor bared his teeth, forcing bravado into his voice. "Hold your ground. Beasts bleed like any other." Yet even he felt the weight of the unseen presence pressing against his nerves. Daniel's gaze hardened, his voice cutting the air like a blade. "If you've come hunting, you've made a mistake." The forest fell silent again, except for the slow crunch of something massive moving just beyond sight. And though none of the mercenaries had yet seen it, every one of them understood, their hunt had already ended. The first glimpse came not in violence but in shadow. From between the dark trunks, a shape emerged, silent despite its size. The mercenaries tightened their grips on their rifles, their eyes widening as the creature stepped into the clearing. Its form seemed carved from night itself, scales as dark as obsidian, gleaming faintly beneath shafts of fading sunlight. 4 eyes glowed with a low, amber fire, intelligent and unblinking. Talons curved like plasma blades dragged shallow furrows in the earth. The Nyx raptor had come. But it did not lunge. It did not roar or bare its teeth. It lowered its massive body beside the cabin, exhaling a sound more like a purr than a growl, and the boy Ethan darted toward it with a squeal of delight. The mercenaries froze in disbelief as the child threw himself against the predator's jaw, wrapping his arms around scales that should have shredded him. Instead, the beast tilted its head, allowing him to climb onto the ridge of its neck. The boy laughed, tugged at one of its ears, and the Nyx raptor rumbled, patient, protective, utterly incongruous with the monster the galaxy feared. The mercenaries did not know what to do. Their instincts screamed that they stood before certain death, yet their eyes betrayed them with this impossible sight. Daniel Briggs did not flinch. He stepped forward, resting his hand on his rifle but making no move to aim. His voice cut the stunned silence. "If you value your lives, keep your weapons lowered." He doesn't like it when people point things at his boy. The phrase hung heavy in the air, his boy. The Nyx raptor's gaze turned from the mercenaries to Ethan, as if confirming the words. Then it fixed its burning eyes on Arichakor and his men. The ground seemed to tremble under the force of its attention. Arichakor's jaw clenched. He had fought in battles that split continents, but never had he felt his chest tighten like this. It was not merely the predator's size or its weapons of tooth and claw, it was the sense of will, the unmistakable impression that this beast was choosing to guard the child. "This is a trick," Arichakor spat, his voice louder than he intended. "Some human illusion." Daniel shook his head, his tone calm but absolute. "No trick. He's real. And he's loyal. That's more than I can say for mercenaries chasing syndicate coin." The insult stung, but more disturbing than the words was the predator's reaction. At Daniel's voice, it shifted its body closer to the boy, a wall of scale and muscle shielding Ethan from every angle. Its nostrils flared, testing the air, gauging the intentions of every alien in the clearing. One of the younger mercenaries whispered, "Captain, the archive said these things can wipe out entire regiments. They're not supposed to obey." Arichakor silenced him with a glare, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Every mercenary present knew the reputation. Planetary extinction class apex predator, untamable, savage. Yet here it was, behaving less like a beast and more like a sentinel. Ethan slid down its flank and crouched near its claw. His small hand pressed against the hardened scale, unafraid, as though the lethal talon were no different from the bark of a tree. The Nyx raptor let out a low growl that vibrated through the soil. The boy giggled as if sharing a private joke with a friend. The mercenaries shifted uneasily. Their weapons were still primed, but none dared lift them. They felt it in their bones, an unspoken warning that to even gesture at hostility would bring a death too swift to resist. Rhakor broke the silence. How? His voice carried more desperation than he intended. How does a man tame death itself? Daniel's eyes narrowed. I didn't tame him. I saved him. Years ago he was wounded, burned, broken, left to die. I patched him up, brought him back from the edge. And when I should have feared him, I chose not to. Since then he's chosen to stay. Not with me. With Ethan. The mercenaries glanced at one another. Daniel's words clashed with every line of their training, every instinct bred from war and survival. A predator of this scale did not choose. It consumed. Yet the evidence stood before them. A child alive, a beast calm, and an ex-soldier speaking as though it were the most natural bond in the world. Rhakor's lips curled back over his fangs. If this is true, then he belongs to us. To the Syndicate. Imagine the credits for delivering not just a Nyx raptor, but one that answers to a human. The words snapped the spell. Greed rippled through the mercenaries, though unease remained. Some nodded at the thought of unimaginable profit. Others grimaced, unwilling to provoke what their instincts told them was an impossible alliance. The predator sensed the shift. It rose slightly, its head lowering, jaws parting to reveal teeth as long as blades. The growl that followed was not a warning this time, it was a promise. Ethan pressed himself against its muzzle. It's okay, he whispered. I'm here. The beast stilled, though its eyes never left the mercenaries. Daniel's voice hardened. Leave now and you'll live to regret nothing. Stay and you'll discover what regret truly means. The mercenaries hesitated, torn between the pull of profit and the terror etched into their instincts. Rhakor felt both, desire gnawed at him, but the sight of the predator leaning protectively over a fragile boy made his stomach twist. This was no beast of burden. This was no weapon to cage. It was something the galaxy had never accounted for. And yet he could not let go of the reward. His claws flexed. His men looked to him for orders. The decision hung like a blade in the air, unfallen but inevitable. The predator shifted again, muscles coiling beneath its scales. The clearing seemed to shrink beneath its presence. Daniel's rifle strap creaked under his tightening grip, though he had not yet drawn the weapon. Ethan's small voice cut through the tension. Dad, they look scared. Daniel did not answer. His gaze met Rhakor's, unflinching. The message needed no words. If the mercenaries took one more step, there would be blood. The standoff held, each side balanced on the edge of chaos. For now, no trigger had been pulled, no claw swung, no talon raked the earth. But the mercenaries knew what they had seen. A predator the galaxy feared above all others had chosen to guard a human child. The realization dug into them like a splinter, and none could shake it. When night fell, some would argue for retreat, others for capture. But the seed of greed had been sown alongside the seed of dread. Both would grow, twisting together until they bore fruit in fire and blood. And in the center of it all stood Daniel Briggs, his son, and the creature whose very presence defied the laws of survival written across the stars. Daniel looked at the boy's tear-streaked face, then at the predator licking blood from its wounds. They'll be back, he said softly. And next time they'll bring more than nets. Ethan pressed his face into the beast's muzzle. Then we'll be ready. The words carried the conviction of innocence, but Daniel knew what lay ahead. The mercenaries would not abandon their greed, and the Syndicate would not accept failure. War was coming, drawn not to planets or borders, but to a bond the galaxy could not comprehend. And the next clash would not be one of skirmishes. It would be a reckoning. The mercenaries lingered long after the sun fell. Their campfire flickered against the trees, painting their armored faces in restless light. They spoke in whispers, their voices strained by what they had seen. The Nyx raptor, silent sentinel, guardian of a human child, had shaken them to their marrow. Some stared into the flames as though the sight of it would not release them. Others sharpened their blades as if steel could grant confidence. Captain Rhakor sat apart, his posture rigid, his silver eyes reflecting both fire and fury. He knew what his men feared and he despised them for it. Fear was weakness. Yet he could not entirely silence the memory of those glowing amber eyes that had regarded him without hesitation, without the slightest flicker of animal unpredictability. That predator had looked at him like an equal, or worse, like prey. He slammed a clawed fist into the earth, scattering embers. "We did not come here to tremble before myths," he growled. "We came to capture a beast. Do you all forget the contract?" One of his lieutenants, the scarred Draven with the jutting jaw, leaned forward. His voice was low but firm. "Captain, I've seen monsters. I've seen war beasts bred in vats and unleashed on cities. None of them shielded a child with their own body. This is no ordinary creature. It is a beast," Arachekor snarled. "And beasts can be broken." But even as he spoke, he noticed how some of the younger mercenaries avoided his gaze. Their loyalty was fraying. They were soldiers of coin, not conviction, and the promise of credits warred against the terror of standing against something unnatural. He needed to act before doubt consumed them. That night, while his men tried to sleep, Arachekor plotted. They would not retreat. They would prove themselves with fire and steel, and when the Nyx Raptor lay bound in chains, every mercenary would see his fear was folly. At dawn, the mercenaries moved. Daniel Briggs watched them from the edge of his cabin, his rifle across his back. He had seen enough campaigns to recognize the signs, sharpened resolve masking festering uncertainty. Ethan clung to his hand, eyes wide. Behind them, the predator lay coiled in the grass, its body deceptively still, but every rise of its chest carried the weight of readiness. Daniel crouched and spoke softly to his son. "They'll try something today. Stay close no matter what happens." Ethan nodded, though fear trembled in his voice. "He won't let them hurt me." Daniel glanced at the predator. "No, he won't. But sometimes even guardians bleed." The first assault came in silence. Nets flung from hidden launchers arced through the air, shimmering with electric filaments. They crashed down over the clearing, snapping tight around the Nyx Raptor's body. The predator roared, the sound shaking leaves from the branches. It thrashed, muscles straining, claws slicing through dirt, but the nets tightened, crackling with energy. Ethan screamed. He darted toward the beast, but Daniel caught him by the shoulders. "Stay back." His own eyes blazed with fury as he saw the predator collapse to one knee under the weight of the stun field. The mercenaries burst from cover, weapons primed, voices raised in shouts of triumph. Arachekor led them, his blade gleaming as he pointed at the struggling beast. "Now, bring it down." But then Ethan broke free from his father's grip. The boy ran into the storm of sparks, his small frame pressing against the predator's jaw. His voice cracked but rang clear. "Stop hurting him. He's mine." The mercenaries faltered. The sight of a child clinging to a legendary monster, shielding it with his body, cut through their bloodlust. Their rifles wavered, their courage fractured. The predator's growl deepened, not with pain but with rage. Energy flared, the ground quaking as its muscles surged. With a violent heave, it tore the nearest net in half. Lightning crackled over its scales as it reared up, eyes burning with vengeance. The stunned hush broke into chaos, mercenaries stumbling back, shouting orders, firing wildly into the clearing. Daniel moved like a man returning to a war he had never truly left. He ripped his rifle free, firing precise bursts that dropped two mercenaries before they could reload. His motions were efficient, born of muscle memory sharpened on countless battlefields. He covered Ethan without hesitation, his body a shield where even the predator's reach faltered. The Nyx Raptor struck. One talon cleaved through a sonic cannon, shattering it in a spray of sparks. A whip of its tail sent an armored mercenary crashing into the trees, his exosuit sparking as it caved in. Blood darkened the soil, and fear once again gnawed at the invaders. Among them, fractures split. A few shouted to fall back, their weapons clattering to the dirt. Others screamed at them for cowardice. The Draven lieutenant hesitated, his eyes locked on Ethan sobbing against the predator's muzzle. His claws twitched, but he could not bring himself to fire. Arachekor bellowed above the din, "Stand and fight. Credits beyond measure await us." But even as he demanded obedience, doubt coiled in his chest. His men's loyalty had begun to splinter, and no promise of coin could mend it. Daniel dropped another mercenary with a clean shot, then spun to cover his son as a bolt of plasma streaked toward them. The predator intercepted, its body absorbing the blast, smoke rising from scorched scales. Ethan cried out, but the beast merely shook itself, planting its bulk between the child and every line of fire. The clearing became a maelstrom of betrayal. Some mercenaries turned their weapons not on the predator but on their own comrades, refusing to be complicit in a slaughter they no longer believed in. Gunfire cracked as old alliances shattered in the chaos. Rha snarled, striking down one of his own defectors with a sweep of his blade. He fought not only the predator but the collapse of his command. And yet, in the heart of the storm, he could not shake the image seared into his mind. A predator, wounded and raging, still refusing to abandon a fragile boy. Daniel pressed against the predator's side, Ethan shielded between them. Father and beast stood together, battered but unyielding. Their unity carved through the mercenaries' courage like fire through paper. At last the survivors began to scatter. Those still loyal to Rha retreated into the forest, dragging their wounded with them. Their voices carried fear more than defiance. Rha himself lingered at the edge of the clearing, chest heaving, silver eyes narrowed in hatred. "This isn't over," he snarled, his voice trembling with equal parts rage and disbelief. "No man commands death. And no beast guards a child forever." The Nyx raptor lowered its head, blood dripping from its scales, but its eyes burned like twin suns fixed upon him. The silent threat was clear: return and he would not leave alive. Daniel said nothing. His silence was more final than any threat. He drew Ethan close, one arm firm around his son, while the predator curled slightly to shelter them both. Rha turned and vanished into the trees with the remnants of his command. The forest swallowed them whole, leaving behind only the wreckage of weapons and the iron taste of fear. The clearing fell quiet again, but it was no longer the silence of predator territory. It was the silence after a storm, heavy with the knowledge that the storm would return. The mercenaries had expected an easy reprieve after their flight, but the shadows of the jungle carried a different tension. The canopy was thick, green blades of alien flora knitting together overhead, allowing only slivers of pale light to filter through. Silence pressed against them like a weighted shroud, broken only by the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. Garrick kept his rifle across his lap, his back to the slick trunk of a tree, while Cale scanned the undergrowth with eyes sharpened by years of soldiering. Between them lay the child, curled against the great predator, its massive frame coiled in a strange half-circle of protection. Its eyes remained closed, but Cale noticed the faint twitch of its ears every time a branch snapped or a breath came too loud. Garrick whispered low, so that even the shadows might not overhear. "You're sure we aren't being followed?" Cale's mouth tightened into a grim line. "As sure as anyone can be in this cursed place. They'll regroup eventually. Mercenaries don't like leaving loose ends, and that child is one hell of a loose end." The predator shifted, its muscles rippling beneath its obsidian hide. Its tail dragged lazily through the moss, as though it knew the danger and dismissed it with contempt. The boy stirred in his sleep, mumbling incoherently, one tiny hand fisting into the creature's fur. Cale felt a pang of unease at the sight, not because it seemed unnatural, but because of how natural it looked. He had seen this species tear through battalions, bodies shredded and morale disintegrated in mere minutes. They were called void-stalkers for a reason, hunters that moved like whispers through darkness, their strength matched only by their cunning. Yet here one lay, letting a child drool against its flank. Garrick pulled his canteen, took a slow sip and muttered, "We should leave it. If the mercs come back, better it draws their attention than us." Cale gave him a look sharp enough to cut steel. "Leave a child? That's not who we are. Not who I am." Garrick's shoulders sagged. "I didn't say the kid. I said the monster." The predator's eyes opened then, twin shards of amber locking onto Garrick's face. No growl rumbled, no teeth bared, but the soldier froze nonetheless, his breath caught in his throat. The gaze lingered only a heartbeat before shifting back to Cale, as if weighing him in some private scale. Then, with deliberate slowness, it lowered its head again, brushing the boy's hair with its jaw as if sealing a vow. Cale said softly, "It won't let us leave it behind. Not while the boy's here." The decision was unspoken, but final. They moved at dawn. Garrick hacked away vines with silent resentment, while Cale carried the child on his back. The predator flanked them, its presence neither loud nor subtle but absolute. The mercenaries kept their pace cautious, every step measured through mud and roots, yet Cale felt a strange sense of safety with the beast at their side. The sense shattered by midday. A plasma bolt shrieked through the air, carving into a nearby tree and sending shards of bark into their faces. Garrick cursed, diving behind cover while Cale instinctively shielded the boy. From the foliage ahead, figures emerged. Mercenaries, their armor matte and their visors glinting like cold knives. Their rifles were leveled, their formation precise, as if they had rehearsed this hunt 1,000 times. The lead mercenary raised a hand, signaling restraint. His voice carried across the gap, harsh and commanding. "Step away from the child. Leave the beast. You walk free." Kale glanced at Garrick, then at the predator, which now stood bristled, teeth glinting under slivers of light. The boy clung tighter to Kale's shoulders, his small breaths ragged with fear. Kale answered, his tone steel-wrapped. That's not happening. The mercenary tilted his helmeted head. You think you can protect it? Protect him? You don't understand what you're carrying. That predator isn't loyal. It's bound by instinct, and instinct breaks. Kale let the words slide past him. He'd heard countless variations before, commanders warning against attachment, strategists insisting predators were nothing but tools. But the look in the creature's eyes as it guarded the boy spoke of something else entirely. Not instinct. Just. The standoff fractured in an instant. One mercenary fired without warning, a streak of plasma lancing toward Kale. He dove aside, the child cradled close. Garrick unleashed a volley in response, his weapon singing with fury. The jungle erupted, air torn by screams and blasts. And then the predator moved. It was a blur, faster than eyes could track. One mercenary was snatched into the canopy, his cry cut short. Another was crushed against a tree, armor crumpling like foil. The mercenaries tried to rally, but the Void Stalker was everywhere. Teeth, claws, tail, an onslaught that dissolved their precision into chaos. Garrick kept firing, but each shot was carefully aimed to avoid the predator, his soldier's instinct aligning with Kale's silent trust. The child buried his face into Kale's shoulder, trembling, yet Kale whispered assurances even as the battlefield turned to carnage. Within minutes, the mercenary squad lay scattered, broken bodies blending with the forest floor. Silence returned, heavier now, thick with the copper tang of blood. The predator padded back to them, unscarred, its chest rising with steady breaths. It lowered its head to the child, who peeked through tear-brimmed eyes, then reached out with trembling fingers to touch its snout. The beast allowed it, even leaned into it, as though the carnage had been nothing more than a storm now past. Garrick exhaled shakily. We can't keep this up. They'll send more. They'll send worse. Kale nodded, his jaw tight. Then we keep moving. Find shelter, find transport. We don't stop until that boy is safe. The predator's gaze swept the horizon, as if it understood every word, as if it too carried the burden of the vow. They pressed deeper into the jungle, leaving ruin behind. But even as they marched, Kale could not shake the feeling that this was no longer about survival alone. The galaxy had seen the predator as weapon, nightmare, curse. Now it guarded a child, and that truth, once witnessed, could not be hidden forever. And somewhere in the shadows, Kale knew, others were watching. Mercenaries regrouping, commanders scheming, and powers far greater waiting to decide whether to fear or revere the bond now born in blood and silence. Would the galaxy flee from it, or would it burn to possess it? The question hung unspoken, yet Kale felt its weight settling like a storm on the horizon. Kale's boots sank into the sodden earth as he led the small group out of the jungle's oppressive shadows and onto a ridge of stone that overlooked the valley below. The boy stirred against his back, half asleep but murmuring softly, while Garrick trudged behind with his rifle at the ready, sweat streaking through the grime on his face. The predator moved with soundless grace at their flank, its amber eyes cutting through the distance like lanterns. The horizon was lit by the faint glow of thruster flares, a convoy moving across the valley floor, mercenaries, dozens of them, more organized than the scattered squads they had faced before. They've called in reinforcements, Garrick whispered, his voice rasping. Whole platoon by the looks of it. We can't outrun them. Kale's eyes narrowed. No. But we don't need to outrun them. He crouched, easing the child gently to the ground. The boy rubbed at his eyes, blinking at the world with that innocence Kale found almost unbearable in the midst of bloodshed. Kale cupped the boy's face, steadying his gaze. You need to be brave just a little longer. Do you understand? The child nodded, silent but resolute. Kale ruffled his hair with a rare softness before rising, shoulders squaring as he turned to Garrick. We end it here. Garrick's jaw worked as though he wanted to argue, but he saw something in Kale's eyes that stilled him. Perhaps it was the acceptance of what had to be done, perhaps the fury of a man who had carried too many losses. Whatever it was, Garrick only nodded and checked the charge on his weapon. The predator padded closer to Kale, towering yet still, as though awaiting a command. Kale met its gaze, and in that unspoken moment, something passed between them. He did not know if the beast understood words, but it understood intent. Together they would hold the line. The mercenary convoy reached the valley's center before they noticed the figures on the ridge. Shouts echoed through comms, rifles were raised, and armored vehicles shifted into formation. Their leader, clad in reinforced exosuit plating, raised a gauntlet fist toward the ridge. His voice carried through amplified speakers, harsh and sharp. "You've cost us squads, soldiers and time. Surrender the child and we might let you live." Kale's answer came not in words but in the firm press of his hand against his rifle's grip. The predator stepped forward, its chest rising, a low growl vibrating through the stone beneath their feet. The mercenaries opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked upward, hissing arcs of light tearing chunks from the ridge. Garrick dropped to one knee, returning fire with bursts so precise they tore through visors and chest plates. Kale sprinted along the ridge, flanking, his rifle barking in rhythm with Garrick's. The predator leapt from the ridge with impossible speed, descending into the mercenary formation like a storm made flesh. Its claws ripped through armored plating, its tail cracked bones, and its jaws silenced screams before they left throats. The mercenaries faltered, but the leader roared orders, his exosuit amplifying his strength as he barreled forward. Plasma cannons mounted on his shoulders unleashed twin streams of fire that forced Kale and Garrick to scatter. The predator lunged at him, claws outstretched, but the exosuit met the strike with hydraulic force, slamming the beast into the dirt. Sparks flew as claws scraped against reinforced alloy. Kale's chest clenched. For all its power, even the predator was not invincible. He charged forward, unloading rounds into the exosuit's joints, sparks showering from the impacts. The leader swatted him aside with a metal gauntlet, sending him crashing against a rock. Pain roared through Kale's ribs, but he forced himself upright, vision blurred, blood filling his mouth. Garrick hurled a grenade into a cluster of mercenaries, the blast shredding their line. Smoke filled the valley, screams and chaos intertwining, but Kale's focus narrowed to the duel unfolding before him. The predator locked in brutal combat with the exosuited leader. The beast snapped its jaws at the man's throat but was slammed back. The exosuit's servos whined, amplifying strength beyond natural limits. Slowly, inexorably, the predator was being forced to the ground. Kale staggered forward, fury burning hotter than pain. His rifle was nearly spent, but he aimed at the exposed cables running along the exosuit's spine. Each shot sparked, each round digging closer. The leader snarled, sensors swiveling toward Kale. "You think bullets will save you? I've torn worlds apart." The predator surged upward with renewed force, as if Kale's defiance had rekindled its own. With a guttural roar, it twisted, jaws clamping down on the exosuit's arm. Metal shrieked as hydraulics burst. The leader screamed, plasma cannons sparking uselessly as the beast wrenched the limb free. Garrick seized the opening, his final rifle burst driving into the exosuit's chest, shattering its power core. The leader staggered, sparks cascading down his armor. Kale closed the distance, every muscle screaming, and slammed his blade into the mercenary's visor. Glass shattered, the scream cut short. The body collapsed with a metallic crash, dust rising around it. Silence fell across the valley. The surviving mercenaries, scattered and bloodied, faltered at the sight of their leader's ruin. One by one their weapons lowered. Some fled into the jungle, others dropped their rifles in surrender. None dared advance. The predator rose from the carcass of the exosuit, bloodied but unbowed, its amber gaze sweeping the field. It released a roar that thundered across the valley, a sound that carried more than dominance, it carried finality. Garrick leaned on his weapon, chest heaving. "Tell me that was the last of them." Kale wiped blood from his lip, his body trembling but unbroken. He glanced at the boy who stood at the ridge's edge, wide-eyed but safe, the predator's shadow cast protectively over him. "If it isn't, they'll think twice before trying again." The boy walked toward the predator, his small hands unafraid as he pressed them against its blood-stained hide. The beast bent its head, lowering itself in a gesture almost reverent. Kale's heart tightened at the sight. It was not just a guardian now, not just a weapon. It had chosen the child, chosen them. Garrick gave a dry laugh, half disbelieving, half awestruck. Galactic mercs, hardened killers, running scared from a kid and his pet monster. Nobody's going to believe this. Kale's gaze lingered on the horizon where the smoke still rose, his voice quiet but certain. "They'll believe it soon enough. Word spreads. They'll fear it. Maybe even respect it. But this bond, it's something they can't control, can't replicate. That makes it dangerous." The predator's amber eyes met his, as if agreeing, as if understanding the burden that had just been forged. Kale placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, feeling the small heartbeat steady beneath his palm. For the first time since this ordeal began, hope bloomed in his chest, not the fragile hope of survival, but the fierce hope of defiance. Above them, the stars blinked cold and distant, unaware of the vow made on that bloodied valley floor. Kale knew the galaxy would come hunting again, with armies and machines and fear sharpened into steel. But when they came, they would find more than a man, more than a child, more than a predator. They would find a bond unbroken, a promise written in fire and blood. And this time, Kale thought as he lifted his rifle with grim resolve, the galaxy would be the one to flee.